and I don't know whether you've heard this or not, but the way supposedly what I heard from more than one old timer was how Star got its name. And there was a prominent outhouse on the outskirts of town that had a star. You know, everybody had a half moon or a ventilation in the door. And there was an outhouse on the outskirts of town with a star on the door. And they used it as a landmark. I mean, it was go as far as that outhouse with the star, and that's how supposedly that's what. And it might not be right, but when I was in Star in junior high, I was in the 8th grade, and my best friend, it was polio, and we'd had a Halloween party. Her sister had contracted polio and 2 of her cousins. And on the way home from the Halloween party, my friend, whom my daughter was named after, Phyllis, was too sick to walk home from the bus stop. And I got off the bus with her and carried her home practically. And she had polio. And she recovered from that pretty well. It affected her legs, and it was a long rehabilitation. And then she died at 42 of breast cancer. The 2 houses that are remarkable in Star are where the green cherry tree was. It's called the Hall House, and it was the doctor's house. It was built in 1905, and it was Dr. Hall's house, and you probably have that on your list somewhere. And my granddaughter is living in that now. They bought that. And the other one is Ralph and Marta Crosgrove, and they have really fixed theirs up. And the things that we don't see now that we did in the early days, there was quite a. It was not unusual at all to see deer walking down the riverbank. We had mule deer that, it was a good place. You don't see those anymore. You don't see meadowlarks, bobwhites, pheasants, deer, snakes, toads, frogs, tomato worms, potato bugs, and stray dogs. People would bring their dogs down to that river and leave them. And we were the closest house. We ended up with a stray dog, usually 2 or 3 a year, monarch butterflies. Oh, and that somebody else that was raised here her name is. She was Sandy Fuller, but now she's Sandy Thompson, I think. And she was raised here in Star. Her parents were very well known. And Elsie went to Middleton High School. She was one of her mother, and Howard and Elsie Fuller. They were local dairy farmers. And Sandy still lives here in Star. She might be somebody to talk to. Okay, that's my monologue.
Okay. Well, I think it would be helpful. I'm going to go back to the beginning. If you introduce yourself, and when and where you're born, and when you came to Star.
Well, I'm Mary Elizabeth Rockhill Foster Kolsky. I was the youngest of 3 children, born in Routt County, Colorado, which is 8,000 foot elevation. And it was the closest little town to us was a tough little railroad town. And my brother was 3 years older than I was. What I remember most about it, he was getting beat up in a fist fight with another boy, and I jumped on the other boy's back and beat the heck out of him. And my brother was not happy. He was more embarrassed than anything, and he said he didn't care if he got beat. I mean, I was to stay out of it no matter what. So, but when I was 8, my dad said the war had started, and part of our relatives in Routt County kind of made a mass migration. My mother's first cousin, my dad's niece, and went to Western Oregon. And we went to Western Oregon, and my dad got a job in a lumber mill there, had a job waiting for him when we got there, as a matter of fact. He said he was tired of 9 months winter and 3 months poor sledding. So, and it was his first time out of Colorado. He was a native born. He was a 22-year-old rancher's son, and my mother was the local school teacher. She'd come from Missouri, and she rode horseback past his place every day. And she was 30 years old, but he liked what he saw. A cute little black-haired 100-pound woman riding horseback back and forth to her little school the other day. She was living with her folks, and they ended up married. And my mom died of a blood clot at an early age, 73, but they had a happy marriage. So my dad had, I don't think, ever been hardly out of California. He'd been to Denver several times. And what kept him out, he went down just like every other red-blooded American boy. He went down the day the war started, the day we heard on our battery-operated radio about Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. Everybody went down to sign up. And they wouldn't take him because he had been crippled. He fell off an engine when he was working on the railroad and hit his heel on a rail and broke his heel, and he limped the rest of his life. But they wouldn't take him. But he had a war-sensitive job anyway. He was working on the railroad. So after he didn't like Western Oregon, so he came over here to Glens Ferry and worked on the railroad at Glens Ferry and found the little farm at Middleton, 90-acre farm. Mm-hmm. And it was before the Black Canyon project came in, so there was the water wasn't there yet, but we took out 80 acres of sagebrush, and I thought, I'm sort of a relic. I don't know whether I could harness a team now or not, but I could tell somebody else how to do it. So, and when we bought this place, I milked 2 cows by hand, and I would go to the sale and buy calves, and I sold milk to everybody in the neighborhood by the gallon. I had the refrigerator in the utility room, and people would come, leave their empty jar, make a check on the little front of the refrigerator. I had a little notepad, and take a gallon of milk, and I furnished milk to most of the neighbors. So that's, yeah.
So when, what were your first impressions coming to this area, Star, Middleton, this area, when you first came
when
here?
When we got to Middleton, and Dad had bought this little farm, and my dad was thrilled with what he had gotten. He bought 80 acres of dry land and 13 acres of irrigated land for $4,750. But we hadn't seen it yet. So he came to Oregon to get us. And while we were en route to Idaho from Oregon, the war was over. And we got to Roseburg and stopped for lunch. And Mom sent me across the road to the little grocery store for something. And the girl in there was just going wild. She said she had a diamond engagement ring on her finger. She said, the war's over, the war's over. And I ran back across to the restaurant to tell everybody. And our waitress started doing the same thing, dancing around. And I always remember my mom laying her hand on my arm and saying, you better be mighty sure about what you're saying. Just repeating what I heard. By the time we got to John Day that night, revelry was in full swing. They had bands. They had Tojo, Mussolini, and Hitler hanging in effigy. They had, there was just people carousing, and it was really exciting for us, of course, and the folks let us stay up. And then the next day we drove to, and so Dad had painted this, it was the nicest house we had ever had. It had running water and it had power, and we were enchanted. But he said, well, it's really not a bad house. The cows have been in it a little, and there's a few floorboards broken. And he was filling us full of stuff like that so that we would be not, to get the full effect. And after my folks were gone, after my dad died, we sold the place, and they tore the old house down. It was a Depression era house. It wasn't. It was the regulation kind where you come on to the front porch, go in the front door, you're in the living room, and then you've got bedrooms off to one side, but it did have a bathroom. The bathroom was situated between the two bedrooms. So if you wanted to go to the bathroom and everybody was in bed, you had to go through somebody's bedroom to get to the bathroom. So that was...
So can you tell me about going to school here?
I started school in the 4th grade in Middleton, and my sister and brother were both introverts, and my sister had a hard time starting new anywhere, and I had a take charge attitude. Here I am, you lucky people. So I always had a good experience. I was integrated into the classroom with no problem. I had probably the best teacher anybody could ever have. Her name was Helen Owen, and she was a natural-born teacher. And I had hard measles, and there were 2 kids in the whole school that year that had scarlet fever, and I was one of them. And they quarantined us. And my brother and sister had to stay home from school too, and I was not popular. But I was really sick with scarlet fever. I practically died. And Helen Owen would bring lessons to my front doorstep, and she helped me through the 4th grade. And then I had her again in the 5th grade. It was a double classroom, and she was probably the best teacher she could. I mean, she was just, yeah, she was a great lady. So, went through school with most of the kids that were in the 4th grade when I joined. We all graduated from high school together. So it was a small school. It's great. The teachers knew the troublemakers, and when anything happened, we didn't have a lot of trouble because they were close, because everybody knew everybody and what was going on. So we had a very small school, and as you get older, you have a lot of time to think. I thought, I have led a charmed life. I was the pet of the superintendent, and I was really the school. The school didn't have a secretary, so if they needed a substitute teacher or they needed anything typed, they just pulled me out of class, and I was a valedictorian, and resisted all of the urgings to go to college and make use of your mind. And I thought I did make use of my mind. I had 3 children that are genius level intelligence. No lie. National Merit Scholars, Idaho Scholar, got to go to Washington, D.C. My kids, my baby boy, I had a baby boy that died of spinal meningitis, and then I had twin girls that were early and didn't make it. So I buried 3 babies early. So 10 years after I had my girls, there was still an empty place at my table. I always wanted 3 kids. And I got my baby boy. And he is as smart as his sisters, but he wasn't about ready to be called a whatever they call it, the smart kids. He was a wrestler, but he lives in Boise. He has 1 little girl, and my oldest daughter that died 3 years ago in her sleep. She never married. She said when she was in high school she wasn't going to get married, and she didn't. But she always did march to her own drummer, and she was a she was a river rafter. She loved it. She kayaks and river rafters and mountain bikes and skiing, and she was she was. And my second daughter has 5 kids. She said she had all of her share and all of her sister's share and half of her brother's share. My brother, my son has one daughter. So, and Mickey and her husband, my second daughter, bought an acreage just north of Star and built a home. He's a dentist. She's a college professor. She went to Stanford on a scholarship. Yeah.
In high school, or when you were in school, clearly you had friends. What kind of things did you do with your friends?
Oh, I played basketball. I played volleyball. We went roller skating. We skipped school and went ice skating with clamp on ice skates. Oh my! I had an old chair that if we were going to go ice skating, I had to come home and get my chair because I could only ice skate because with clip on, you have to have some ankle support. And if you're going to ice skate, you have to push a chair or something because you can't ice skate with clamp on ice skates. I couldn't anyway. But yeah, there was 2 movie theaters in Caldwell, and we would go to movies and dance. Oh my goodness, dance. We had a 4-H club in Middleton, and one of our, it was a 4-H leader's son, called the square dances, and we went around and gave floor shows for people where we were invited. Our little square dance group. We had, So, and everything was dance. It was, and the kid I dated in high school, we got so we could really, we really loved to jitterbug. Shotgun boogie. So yeah, that's what we did. And horseback riding. And in the summertime, it was I raked hay with my mule team, and in the winter of 48, several years after we got here, my dad had by that time traded our horse team for a mule team, and we had an extra snowy winter. Everybody was snowed in, but my dad had a team of horses, and most people didn't have a team by then. They just had a tractor, but we had a team, and Dad could mow the hay and I could rake it. I was always the outside girl, and because we had a team, we could get through the snow. We came from snow country. We knew snow country, so our mule team dug out quite a few of the neighbors.
You mentioned 4-H dances and stuff. Were you part of 4-H?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that was. We had Daryl must turn the dog out. We had a really. Dad called her "Get It Done." Her name was Gladys Payne, and she started the 4-H club. Yeah, we took sewing. I made every article of clothing my family wore, and it was in those days, in the 50s and 60s, it was cost saving to sew your own clothes. I even made my husband suits. And if anybody wanted a bedspread or a dust ruffle or whatever, they came to me. My sister was much more meticulous. I mean, if pretty near was always all right with me. If it didn't have to be perfect, but she would. I remember when she made a cute little wool jacket, and people would compliment her on it. Well, yes, but the slit in this sleeve is longer than the slit in this. I mean, stuff like that bothered her. Didn't bother me.
What were your favorite memories of living in Star?
Oh. Well, when we moved here, this was just a little dirt road. I guess just raising my kids. And then my sister got a divorce from her husband after we built this house. This house wasn't very old. And she had 7 kids. Good Catholic guy. And he got to, as my husband would say, he got to chasing cars. And I bought this acreage next door. And Jim dug the pond. We drilled the artesian well, and we built my sister a house next door. I mean, she had it built. It was her house. She said, if you have to be married to a son of a bitch, it's a good thing he pays his bills. And and he never did stand on the child support. So she went to nurses training. But for 8 months, I had my sister, her 7 children, and her dog that lived here in this little house with us while she built that one. That was fond memories. I was the little sister, but really my mother never drove, and I was always she was happy to turn over the responsibility of anything to somebody else, and I was happy to take that responsibility. And when I was in the year after I graduated from high school, before I got married, they sent my little cousin from Western Oregon. She had laid out of school and wouldn't go to school, and so they sent her to live with us. She went to school for a couple of days, and then she quit. And I was the one that found out where to take her for psychiatric care and took her. And I thought, I was 18 years old myself. And none of the adults in the house, I mean, it was perfectly normal for them to turn it over to me. So I guess I just enjoy, I knew what I wanted. I knew how I wanted to raise my kids. The big garden spot out there was where I was better outside than I was inside. And now I look out there and I think there's all that work I could be doing that I should be, and I'm not. I'm not looking, age has done that. I'm living a different life now. I think I've kind of resigned from the active part. And I'm not active in the town affairs at all anymore. But it was just, the whole, I guess I chose the life I wanted to live. And that's why I say I've led a charmed life, because in spite of the, you don't expect to get through life with no grievances. And in spite of everything, it's gone just about how I wanted it to. My late husband, died at 45 of colon cancer. The day before my 43rd birthday, I was a widow. But my sister lived next door, and she had remarried by that time, and he was a railroader. And he had a railroad friend whose wife had just died of a heart attack at 45. So Fred worked real hard to get us together, and he did. So I thank my brother-in-law for Daryl. And Daryl is a Idaho native. His folks are all in Kuna. You go through the Kuna cemetery, and most of the people over there are related to him. His grandpa farmed in Kuna, and Daryl says he remembers the attic had a whole room of storage batteries and a windmill. They had electricity. Electricity was not available in the early 1900s, but he fixed up electricity for their house. So his grandpa and his dad were both very and Daryl is 94 now, and he has macular degeneration. He doesn't complain. He just does what he can. And I admire him for that and feel guilty for not doing more myself, because I think I'm not unable, I'm unwilling at this stage, yes. So.
you've been here since 1950. Well, you were in the area since 1948.
We got here in 45.
45. So you mentioned how small Star was and very small community. You've seen a lot of changes between 1945.
Oh,
and
you know,
here.
they put this sidewalk in a few years ago, and somebody asked me how I felt about the sidewalk, and I said, "You're looking at the lady that didn't even want the road paved." I objected when it was just a little dirt road. As a matter of fact, my oldest daughter got off the school bus over here one day and saw that they had named her street. It was Main Street, and she wrote a cute little poem. I wish I could find it, and I can't. She wrote a cute little poem about not realizing all this time that she lived on Main Street. And, you know, this dusty little road, it was the cutest little poem. She was a gifted writer. Anyway, it was a surprise to her to find out they named her street. And there's a bridge abutment down there. There used to be a bridge across, and that was before my time. This was Main Street, and the bridge abutment was, it's still there. That's what the kids dive off of in the summertime. So, yeah.
But have you enjoyed the changes you've seen?
No.
Are there things? Okay.
No, old people don't. They just want it just like it used to be. They live in the past. I'm sorry. I do not applaud. You know, I go to a library book club. There are things about Star I like now. I like the Subway sandwich. I don't want that to go away. And you have to have a clientele, or you have to have enough people to support a business. So I like the library, the Subway, you know, those amenities I like, and Ridley's grocery store. And you know, I used to figure a half an hour anywhere. It's a half an hour to Meridian, half hour to Caldwell, Nampa, Boise, where if you wanted anything, you had to go to somewhere else to get it. And you don't anymore. And I don't drive as much as I used to. I feel competent, but most people who are old and driving feel competent, whether they are or not. And I don't know which category I belong in. My daughter rides with me and says she's not afraid to ride with me. Daryl doesn't. He threatens to drive, but he knows he's got macular degeneration, and his eyesight is seriously compromised. Plus, his hearing is, yeah. So I feel very fortunate to have, yeah, my good eyesight, good hearing.
With all the changes here that have happened since 1945, are there things you miss?
The things I miss are the things I read to you. I miss seeing deer trotting down. The deer would come down our road, and they would see the green pasture, and they would leap over the fence, and then we've got a hot wire strung on the other side of the fence, and they would just tear heck out of that electric fence, just string electric wire, so you would be out all day fixing the fence. But I miss the country part of it, and I quit milking cows quite a while ago. As a matter of fact, it was when my late husband was sick, and my sister had been, she was living next door, and she'd been milking for me while we went to Greece as a last resort, and came home, and I knew Jim was dying, and I went out there, and I was gonna milk, and I kicked the barn door open and kicked the calf out, two calves out with the cow, and said, "I'm gonna do us all a favor." And I kicked those calves out the door, and I haven't milked since. But yeah. So
with all the things you've done, did you ever work outside the home?
I worked for 2 years I worked for Boise Cascade. It was Boise Payette at the time. When Jim and I first got married, I worked for Caldwell Lumber Company. Again, I was a I did my own thing, and I should have been fired. But the boss was a sweet man with teenage kids of his own, and he put up with me. I was good at what I did. I could type. But I was also, if he asked me to come in on Saturday morning and I said I would, I didn't say I'd be there at 8 o'clock. I might get there at 10, and he would be mad when I got there. And on Saturday I slept in. I was sassy, but he put up with me. And then after I got married, and Jim was working in Boise, and he got a job at National Cash Register, and I wanted to ride back and forth with him. So I got a job at Boise Cascade. It was Boise Payette at the time, and it was at the corner of 10th and Grove, and I worked there until 4 days before my first baby was born. She was 6 weeks early, and I wasn't expecting her. She showed up early. She weighed 5 pounds.
Let's see. I just want to make. Oh, I would like you to explain something. You've made reference to Overtown. Can you explain what that means?
Well, I think I probably picked it up from Jim, and it was like he always referred to it as Overtown, and it's just that was just there's here and then there's Overtown.
So just another part of town.
It was just we're not in Star's over there. So, and we weren't in the city limits at the time. So the people that have I go to this library book club, and most of the new people that come in are from California, and I think we shouldn't resent the Californians. When I graduated from high school, everybody tucked their diploma under their arm and headed for California. And California has probably as many Idahoans in it as Idaho does Californians. But we can't see it that way, we're being, as far as we're concerned. But anyway, people tell me where they live, the street they live on, and I have no idea where that is. But they tell me where it is, and I'll say, oh, that was Wilhite's 40. Oh, that was Keller's 40. Oh, that was Eldon's 80. There's a subdivision almost just across Star Road from us, almost straight west of where we are now. And I thought, I plowed that field one time. I land planed it for Eldon. So, and now there's houses on it. I think about that every time I drive by there. So, and I miss the rural. I wanted to be rural. I think that one thing that annoys me is when we had kerosene lights when I was little. Light was, I look around and I think, why does everybody have to light up the outside of their house for night? Why can't they just turn off the lights? I look out my window and I see lights, and it annoys me. I think, just turn out your lights. I don't have any outside lights. I don't want any outside lights. And they're talking about light pollution, and I thought, yeah. They can't really see the outer space anymore because of the light pollution. And I thought, yeah, we have too much, there's too damn much light. Turn off your lights.
So with the lights, it doesn't feel as rural as it used to.
Bingo. Nothing, yeah, it doesn't feel. And it's not that I want to do any of that stuff anymore. I don't want to do anything. I read. I am a voracious reader. And I miss the bob whites and the quail and the things that used to be so common, pheasants, and yeah, like I say, the wildlife. And I don't see frogs and toads and snakes and stuff in my garden like I used to. And I've been very careful about what sprays I use. I'm not a purist as far as the lawns goes. You know, if there's a dandelion in the lawn, pick it. So,
Well, I'm sort of at the end of what I had. I thought I'd find out if there's anything.
I'll tell you one thing about Star. There was a mint still just right over on Star Road, right, and there was an egg farm right in the middle of town. And we had a spreader. We were farming 80 acres down on Blessinger Lane, and we had a manure spreader truck. And the chicken farm, Jim was working in Boise, and the chicken farm would have a load of chicken manure, and they would call me, and I was the one that was going down, and I said, "So if you miss me, I'm stuck in the muck in the chicken poop truck." And it was my job to go drive the spreader truck down and spread the chicken manure. I really don't miss that. But there was an egg farm right in the middle of Star. It was on 2nd Street, corner of 2nd Street, and it was a little,
And go ahead.
And you asked me if I worked. There was a mink farm right outside of town, Moyle's Mink Farm, and I would work on the mink farm when they were. It was fleshing mink is what it was doing, taking the fat off the hides. They had a machine, a cone-shaped machine, and then you'd spread the pelt over and clip it on, and then there was a machine that vacuumed the mink fat into barrels, and I fleshed mink in the. And one of my friends over town took care of Tim, and then in the spring I bred mink, and then I did fill in a few. I gathered eggs for Willis's occasionally, if they were short of hand. Their little go-to girl she was overweight and she had bariatric surgery, and she just about died from it. Anyway, while she was laid up, I agreed to go gather eggs for them. So, I delivered telephone books. What else did I do? I sold milk. I figured good wages by sewing all our clothes. My fruit room had 600 jars of. I provided the meat and the milk and the butter and the eggs and the vegetables and by staying home. And that's what I wanted to do. That was really my ambition. So I was very fortunate to live the life I wanted. I was, yeah. And I've been very fortunate to have two husbands that put up with me. We've been married 40 years, and we both thought we were over the hill when we got married. and now we realize we were just kids. But I will say that I married two men that would have done anything rather than see me unhappy. So, good guys. Good guys, all of our family. And I've got my second daughter lives over just north of town, and a more devoted daughter I couldn't ask for. And my oldest daughter, she was living in Boise, but she was going to sell her house and move close. They were both going to take really good care of me in my old age. So I'm very, very fortunate, and my son too. But I'll tell you what, everybody thinks they want boys, but you can't when you get older, you can't do without your girls. The girls are the ones that carry the load. They do. I think it's in our nature. We're more caretakers. It's genetic. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it.
So because we live in an area that there's like, 4 seasons, what's been your favorite season in Star? And I'll have you talk to Dean.
Well, I will say that I have said Idaho makes up for its tumultuous springs. You never know what you're going to get in the spring, but fall has to be. We have almost invariably beautiful falls. It used to be we would have a frost about September 21st, and you'd look out and there everything would be, But then you would have Indian summer. Mm-hmm. October is almost invariably a beautiful month in. And that's another thing I miss. The harvest trucks, there would be truckloads of onions, and I could go down to the river bridge, and that hit a bump on the river bridge, and it would always spill out. There was always onions down there, and I'd just take a little walk and go down and pick up my winter onions. And the potato trucks, all the produce, the mint trucks, I guess the harvest season, I have always loved the harvest. And you could go to Sunny Slope and pick your own peaches, and the improved Alberta peaches were my favorite. I'd can about 100 quarts. Are actually pollinator trees, and they aren't good shipping peaches. And Williamson's orchard over there would have a row of improved Alberta peaches down, and she said, a hail, Mrs. Williamson talking to my mom, she said, a hail peach. She said you could almost play baseball with it, and it wouldn't hurt it. She said they're good shipping peaches, and they are pretty to look at, but I wouldn't have anything but an improved Alberta. So, yeah, I would. The fall season, I have to love it.
Even 20 years ago, I remember driving down roads and just during certain times of the year hitting mint fields. I don't even know that they're even there anymore. Down Chinden.
We raised down on Blessinger Lane. We raised 50 acres of mint for years, and stilled it over here at Ronnie Kinsley's. And when Jim died, I still had I forget how many barrels of mint oil that I hadn't sold yet, and I kept it over for a year, and got twice as much as I would have otherwise. And I thought, if Jim had been alive, he'd have sold that.
I hate to say this. I need to use your restroom.
It's, I drew the plans for this house myself on a graph sheet, and that's one thing I regret, is having the bathroom door in straight line with the with the front door. That's one thing I'd change. But I thought, for somebody 25 years old and thinks she knows everything, it's been a comfortable house.
Do you remember any activities at the Grange Hall on the other side of town?
I do remember they used to have dances there. Yes, I've been to several dances at the Grange Hall. Yes. People, I don't know whether people still dance like that or not, but I used to be wild about dancing. I still dance by myself sometimes. I've got a YouTube here, and I play old Western music, and I dance by myself a lot. I'm not up for the twirling and stuff like I used to. I had a boyfriend in high school, and I'll tell you, we could dance. Yeah.
Mary, we're going to be interviewing Mr. Willis, the egg farm man.
Doug Willis?
Yes, he's still working.
If
you can believe it, yeah.
He's, don't believe everything you hear.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll let him sit in.
Glad I mentioned it.
Sherman Marie, we used to have a pinochle group, and his parents were in our pinochle group, and I really liked his parents. He is an oldie son, and he married a girl from Utah, and they didn't treat his parents right. I am not.
That's sad to hear, but that happens. Yeah.
So,
Once son's married, it's not the same for the mother.
a daughter's a daughter all of her life. A son is a son till he takes a wife.
There's so much truth in that.
Yeah, there is.
I've seen it over and over and over again. Yeah.
And I had probably, and I'm not denigrating Doug. He's just, he was a little slow all the time he was growing up.
Okay.
And he's an only child.
Okay.
And, yeah, I haven't seen Doug for a long time. So,
Mary, this has
But-
been such a good interview. I'm thinking that this might be one interview we need to have an exhibit in itself. It just summarizes things so well. So we may be doing an add-on with the whole interview for you for one of our exhibits. So it was a wonderful interview. Thank you.
I'm glad.
You're a remarkable person.
I'm thankful to be 88 years old and still have all my marbles and my teeth.
I mean, it's incredible to me. I want to apologize for not wanting to work outside. You've already paid your dues.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and, to the point you made earlier when I asked about working outside the home, and clearly you have worked a lot outside the home, but bringing income in was more than offset by, like you said, the milk, the eggs, the clothes.
I was conscious of the fact of what I was doing. As a matter of fact, my high school teachers were disappointed in me for not going to, not doing something with my mind. Mm-hmm. And I had my sister, on the other hand, would have gone to college all her life if she had, she loved it.
Professional student.
Yeah, she loved it. And I thought, I don't want to be educated. I want to be entertained. If I'm reading, if I pick up something along the way from what I read, that's gravy. But mostly, I read what entertains me. I'm not reading. I don't want to take a college course and study. I just never did. But my high school teachers, who, like I say, I was the pet of the superintendent. So consequently, everybody had to treat me right. And I got away with stuff that, like working in the office, and on April Fool's Day, I choreographed it so that everybody said all the clock's a half hour ahead. And I worked in the office, so I rang the bell a half hour early. And all the teachers came out looking at their watches, and and I yelled down the hall, "April Fool!" And everybody laughed. They were supposed to. I just think I think about there were I never had any. I think about the. I was the class president. I was the homecoming queen. I was the valedictorian. I was the football captain's girlfriend. I was, but I don't ever remember being intentionally mean to anybody. I thought they might. I think back about who I could have been more solicitous. I mean, I would have taken better care of the people that needed it. But I didn't. I was not mean. Ever. I don't think. Intentionally. I'd like to know how some of the, I have talked to some of the kids I graduated with. A lot of them are dead now. Most of them, as a matter of fact. Over half.
And many of them still live in the area.
Am I going to live in the area?
No, I mean, many of the friends that you have,
no,
they're still around here.
no. There's Pat and Jim Lightfoot live over in Ontario. No, as a matter of fact, my high school boyfriend came and visited me about 30 years ago. And I treated him bad. I dumped him. And I treated him bad, and I apologized to him. But I'm trying to think of any. One classmate lives in Boise, but she's in very bad health. And there's several of them in California. One of my girlfriends lived in. She was a teacher, and she lived in Las Vegas. And I used to go down and visit her. She died about the same time Phyllis did. My very best girlfriend that we died at 42 of breast cancer, and her sister just younger that got polio first died at 48 of breast cancer.
That's the hard part about getting older.
Yeah, that's what Daryl and I have said. We don't want a funeral service just to have the family gather. Everybody we know is dead. I have got. I belong to 2 book clubs. Just friends that I've had for 50 years. You'll have Marla Scrosgrove and Marvine Ross and. Moyles have been here a long time. Moyles Mink Ranch. Yeah. Have you got them on your list?
The Moyles?
We haven't. Do you mean the one who's in the legislature?
Yeah. Mike's the oldest of their
Yeah.
kids.
We would eventually like to have him do a history with the legislature in session right now. He's been kind of, difficult.
His health has been bad. Lynn's, as a matter of fact, both of their health is kind of bad, but yeah. Joe's uncle, Ella and anyway, Joe's uncle started the Moyles were all raised mink in different parts of the state, and Joe was living in Meridian when I first started working for his name escaped me. Anyway, Rod and Ella lived on the highway up there, and Rod, his uncle Rod, had the mink farm here in Star, but Rod was getting older and he turned it over to Joe. So I was working for Rod. As a matter of fact, Rod had a little rental house, and he asked if I'd paint the inside of that house. He had some renters move out, and another, yeah, I was available, Jones. So I painted the inside of the house for him, and that they tore the house down lately, but I thought still had that yellow door I painted. I thought that yellow door was exceptionally pretty, and Rod never complained about what colors I chose. So, but Rod or Joe was raised in Meridian, and Lynn is an Idaho native. She was, I think, somewhere American Falls, and I don't see eye to eye with Mike Moyle on almost anything, but Lynn lights up my life. His mom, and his younger brother was my son's age, and they were in school together. So I had Johnny here a lot. They're Mike's younger brother, just younger. Little Johnny Moyle.
I think just in closing, if you want to ask her if there's anything that she didn't
Okay.
say that she wants to about Star.
My list is complete.
Okay, well, I want to say thank you so very much for taking the time to talk with us. It's been delightful to talk with you and hear.
You know,
about the
my
area.
favorite thing is talking.
But you're a woman of many talents, not just talking. Wow. Some of the people we're going to interview mentioned that they used to buy milk from you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mark was gone from home but his two younger brothers, one of his younger brothers, Jimmy, came and got, and sometimes somebody would take. Sometimes there would be no milk in the refrigerator, and Jimmy came down early one morning. Right after milking one morning, and somebody had already taken all the milk, and he came back later that afternoon, and I said, Jimmy, I only have 2 cows, and I only milk them twice a day. So don't expect any until tonight. And Jimmy and Ren used to babysit for me. The girls, my daughters would much rather have had Jimmy and Ren babysit them because I'd come home and the house would just be in a shambles. But they had a good time. Ren taught them all of the Beatles songs. Ren was a Beatles fan, and they had been dancing and singing to the Beatles songs, and so yeah. And Eldon, Mark's dad, and Lorraine got married. Lorraine was a divorcee. She had tuberculosis. Eldon's second wife, but she was. Of all the friends I've lost, Lorraine was probably the one I miss the most. That was Eldon's. That's Mark's stepmom, and I don't think Mark ever felt a difference. She was remarkable.